of Nick's Halloween Spoooktacular. Okay, I actually read this one. For you. I hope you love me for it. Really, it wasn't that bad. The Amityville horror is not a mere ghost story that some half-assed writer cooked up with a joint in one hand and a bottle of whiskey in the other. It's a non-fiction novel, being a narrative of an actual event that occurred up in Amityville, a suburb of Long Island. Granted, I found it in the fiction section of my local library, but no, it really happened. The book was written by Jay Anson after he'd been referred to the Lutz's family and their demonic encounter. He took the title of the book from an H.P. Lovecraft story called The Dunwich Horror, which is a very fine story and far more interesting. It also shows how Lovecraft was increasing in popularity around this time, but I'm not here to talk about him. First, I have to detail the grisly murders that took place. The DeFeo family owned the house first, and one night the eldest son came home drunk out of his mind and murdered his two parents, two younger brothers, and two young sisters. This is not made up. This is a real case that really happened. I mean, that's more terrifying than any ghost story. You might think a house like this would be a hard sell, and it was, until the United States Marine Corps got involved. George and Kathy Lutz and her 3 children from another marriage bought the house and moved in about a month before Christmas. George was retired from the Corps and presumably not afraid of the horror there. They even had a preacher come over and bless the house, and that's when it started. Father Mancuso says he heard a voice hiss, "Get out," and he left. After that, strange goings-on infected the house. At first, the family just started acting weird, like they would get upset over little things, get in fights, the parents snapped and beat the children. Hell, even the dog wouldn't stop barking. George started sleepwalking at night, and the little girl made best friends with a pig that wasn't there. There were moving chairs, walking lion toys, green slime, red rooms, beards, glowing eyes, and a host of other weird tales. The book really reads like a collection of little incidents that build on one another, finally culminating in a grand climax that digs deep into your subconscious and leaves you feeling rattled. The thing is, we never really find out what any of it means. Nobody ever says that it's the devil or the unsettled spirits of the murdered family or that it's an Indian burial ground. It's just spooks being spooks. Why does no one ever talk to any of these ghosts? Like, if your house was haunted, wouldn't you be like, "Yo, ghosts, how's it hanging?" I mean, I would. And that also sounds like something the Marines would do, too. But anyway, they ran away from the house and sold this story to the book publishers. And yes, there have been people who have lived in it since, and they said nothing bad ever happened. A couple of other witnesses came forward and said it was a bunch of crap, that it was over-exaggerated. Even the priest involved said none of this stuff happened to him. There's a subplot in the book about how George was worried about paying for the house as it was quite expensive and he just wasn't making that much money. I think when you factor that in, it becomes pretty clear why they sold the story to the publishers. But what you don't realize is... So after the book was published, it was turned into a film. It was an early role for James Brolin and even had Margot Kidder, fresh off her performance from Superman. I've never seen it, but it was a big hit, going back to the simple ghost stories after the nightmares of the 1970s, like The Exorcist, The Omen, Halloween, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and the old Lord of the Rings cartoon. That one's creepy. And like all great horror movies, it was followed by sequels. Sequels until the end of time! And remakes! We can't forget about remakes! And sequels to the remakes! Jesus Christ. There have been 16 films about this haunted house, with the 17th due out next year. I gotta say, my favorite title of the sequels is Amityville. It's about time! I mean, this was a damn direct-to-video release. No, not DVD, video. This was back in the 90s. Not only that, but a series of sequel novels were written, predominantly by John G. Jones, though a guy named Hans Holzer pinned a couple too. Hun bastard! The first sequel, aptly titled The Amityville Horror Part 2, is a genuine Part 2. It actually follows up on the Lutz family and how they were living after being around demons and such. The book primarily makes up a bunch of crap and is even inconsistent with the first book, but it does have degrees of truth to it. After that, they just started writing cheap horror novels. bad ones, too. As usual, I've never read them, and I wonder if anyone else has. I mean, this is just kind of wrong. Those people really died in that house, and supposedly the family really saw all those ghosts. They're making money off of murder and mental illness. Let's assume they're not just making it up, but instead actually believe something was there. That means they're crazy! But I guess crazy people control Hollywood. I find it interesting that, like most horror series, it follows the villain around, showing how he kills more innocent people. That's an interesting idea to me, that a horror series is, essentially, the villain's journey, when you think about it, but instead of a badass killer like Freddy Krueger, Dracula, the Jigsaw guy, this one follows a house around. No, not that house. Not that one either. It just shows how more and more people move into the same haunted house, and it keeps scaring them off. I mean, you think it would do something different, but I guess those Indian ghosts are getting back at the white man. And the white man is getting back at Hollywood by keeping this crap alive. What the hell? What is it about this film that people gravitate towards? Yeah, sure, it's a somewhat above-average horror story, but I don't see the big whoop. Maybe it has something to do with the truthfulness of the story, how people like to contemplate what's real and what's made up. I continually dismiss the book as fiction and don't put much faith in ghost stories, but what if I'm wrong? What if there are still things that go bump in the night that can't be explained by science and by modern man? What if there are things that are too terrifying to look at, and it's our terror that keeps them at bay? And that's the real horror. Not the demons or the ghosts, not the red-eyed pigs or nursery-rhyming little girls, but the uncertainty of a life, the not knowing what lurks behind every corner, and when you're so sure of something you can feel it, but it turns out that you're wrong anyway.